All right. Welcome to New Possibilities. I speak truth to power without fear. So today I have a special guest, LA. Everybody in the black sector knows who he is, so there's no need for any further introduction. But this morning I did a video about R. Kelly, and in response to that video, LA had some comments. And in the video I talked about how those women, if those allegations are true, I pointed out how they are in fact victims in this situation. So he took issue with that. He asked, how are they victims? And then he posted a video response. So right now what I'm going to do is like give LA a chance to tell me like where he disagreed with what I was saying, and then we'll take it from there point by point.
Okay. Well, when it started off, you were basically alluding to the idea that there were probably underage women in there, or close to underage, borderline underage women in there. But then you went on to say that the woman was 21 to 22 years old. And secondly, you just continued to call the women victims. And not only did you not ever call them women, you also called them little girls, even though they're grown women, and you also called them victims. So I took issue with the way that you were presenting yourself. It looked like you were on some Fox News type stuff.
Okay, so in terms of like, I'll start off with your first point about the age. At least one of the people was like 16 when they met R. Kelly. So that's, in a lot of jurisdictions, that's not even the age of consent. But it's my understanding in a couple of these jurisdictions where he is, the age of consent is like 16 and 17. But we know in many other places that's not the age of consent, and that is very young. Is somebody really capable of making some kind of important decision at that age? So that's the first thing. And you asked about how are they victims? First of all, like a lot of these women came to his house under false pretenses. They were promised, an opportunity to pursue a career in singing and all that kind of stuff. They were promised to be given some kind of lavish lifestyle and all that kind of stuff. But when they got there, they were subjected to control. This man controlled what they ate, when they ate, how they dress, when they bathe, when they sleep. He would record their sexual encounters. This man took their phones. He confiscated their phones, cutting them off from their friends and family so they could not contact their family, prevented them from having access to social media. Also, in the article, and this is the article right here, it's in BuzzFeed. When we're done with this video, I'll post a link in the description box so people could actually read the article for themselves. But in that article, it points out how not only did he control every aspect of their lives, this man verbally and physically abused them. They cited one incident where this man actually slapped one of these women, young women, just for having a friendly conversation with a cashier at a restaurant. So that's one example of like the brutality, the abuse. Now, and also, they pointed out in this article how there's a man that's stationed outside of this so-called guest house where all these young girls who are barely legal are staying. This man is stationed out there to make sure that they don't leave. So they can't come and go as they want to. They can't even leave the recording studio or this guest house as they want. So, I mean, just on the basic facts, based on the control that he's exercising on them, based on the physical and verbal abuse, clearly they are victims. These girls are they're young, very young. So they're, at that age, somebody is gullible, they're impressionable, they're easily influenced. So, I mean, to me, it's just an open and shut case that they are victims here. I mean, I'm trying to understand how you say they are not victims.
Is it time for me to interject? Should I connect my microphone? Let me see. Maybe because I'm getting like a background on because I'm getting like an echo. All right, let me see now. Am I clear? Can you hear me? I mean, like, because you had an echo going. I don't know if you had your background playing or what it was, but we had an echo. I'm pretty sure it's good now. So it's showing good now. Well, what I wanted to say to you, was I'm listening to what you were saying. I'm trying to figure out what are you reaching towards when you keep saying barely legal. Now, they're legal or they're not legal. What is this barely legal thing? And you being a lawyer,
that really like flabbergastes me that you would use a term like barely legal. Your mic is muted. Your mic is muted, New Possibilities.
All right, yeah. Well, I'll address that like before we move on to the core issue, which is actually whether or not they're victim. I mean, the fact of the matter is this man has a long history of sexually abusing young underage girls. You know, this man married Aaliyah at the age of 15. This man had been facing criminal charges back in the 90s for engaging in lewd sexual acts with a 14-year-old, urinating on this 14-year-old. This man has been sued on multiple occasions for having relations and violating young underage girls. And this is a part of a pattern. He is basically going to jurisdictions where it is legal for him to be with 16 and 17-year-olds. I mean, a 16 and 17-year-old, you know, that is the age, for all intents and purposes, of a child. You know, most 16-year-olds can't even provide for themselves or take care of themselves. You know, despite the technical legal definitions in certain jurisdictions, you know, the case in most places, that is not the age of consent. That is considered underage. And the fact that he chooses these girls is a part of that long pattern. So, and it goes to this issue of control. When you get somebody that's young, gullible, uninformed, you know, with no experience, it's easier to manipulate them. It's easier to control them. And that's why this matters. You know, that's why it's relevant. That's why I raised it. And, you know, really, it goes back to his whole pattern of controlling people, of, you know, engaging in pedophilia and all that kind of stuff. So I just can't understand what, man, like, why would anybody defend this stuff? I mean, I have a daughter. I mean, I'm sure I have 2 daughters, and I know that you have daughters. Would you want somebody like R. Kelly to be in the company of your daughter? Would you trust your daughter to stay with R. Kelly under all these circumstances, under all this history?
So, first of all, the problem with the age of consent and what it actually means. It seems like you really want to go to war with what should be the age of consent, because you're trying to say that the age of whatever it is, 16, 17, 18, that is the legal age that you can have consenting sex, right? So why it seems like you're challenging the age of consent more than you're challenging what he's doing. And by you using, I believe you're being very disingenuous by using the term barely legal. It's either you're legal or you're not legal. See how you're blurring the line? It's you have an agenda that the seems is that you have something against R. Kelly and you're not looking at what's going on. So what I'm trying to say is if the way you're putting it out there is if he wouldn't even date a woman that was of age, like if she was like some of the women are 21 and 22. So I can see if he had women there and by the time they turn 18, he's like, look, you done got too old, it's time to go. You know what I'm saying? But these women are continuing to be there even after they get older and older and older. And he's also dated older women as well. So I'm trying to figure out what is your case with this and how can they be victims if there's no crime that has been committed yet?
Well, I already explained like how they're victims. You know, I cited all those examples of how they're victims, how they're being controlled, how they're being physically and verbally abused, how they're not free to go. I mean, as a matter of fact, I mean, the fact that they are younger, you know, in the big scheme of things, even if they were older, if they were living under these similar circumstances where they are lured somewhere under false pretenses and they don't have the right to leave freely, and they have had their phones taken from them, where they are physically abused, told what kind of clothing they can wear, told when they can eat and when they can sleep, you know, regulated when they can bathe and all that kind of stuff. That's akin to slavery. These women are, if these allegations are true, are sexual slaves. And I don't understand like how anybody could question whether or not these people are victims. If they're, you know, young and they've been lured there under false pretenses, and once they get there, they're not free, they're deprived of freedom, they're physically and verbally abused. How can they not be victims? I mean, how is that not?
Okay, what you have described, it sounds like the majority of black men who have black wives, told when to eat, told when to sleep, told when to have sex, told when to take a bath, told it's time to wash your ass, your feet stinking. It sounds like you're describing a relationship where basically the man is the boss, so that's like out of range of this matriarch that we live in right now, because all those things you're saying, it sounds like somebody in a relationship and somebody's the boss. In the majority of cases in black households, the woman is the boss. So it sounds like R. Kelly is the boss in his relationships. First of all, we can point that out by saying that he has multiple women under his control. And it's silly for us to try to make it seem like these women are victims. And the thing is, you keep saying that he confiscated their phones. From what I heard, the story that I heard is that he replaced their phones with new phones. And he told them that if they contact their families, that would be a breach of their relationship contract, which is he basically put an ultimatum down. If you do this and you do that, you're out of here. So it doesn't sound like they're being held under, they're being held against their will. It sounds like they're being held against, if they break his rules, they're no longer his woman no more. Sounds like a relationship. It sounds like he's the boss of the relationship. And he sounds like if they get out of pocket, they're going to be cut off.
All right, let me respond to that. I mean, first of all, like, I think that this language of being out of pocket and all that kind of stuff, you know, I think that that's obviously like problematic. You know, I think that that's language that's about dominating somebody. It's about, like, it's a form of oppression. When you're telling somebody that they can't do all these different activities and you're regulating every single one of these activities, that's a form of oppression. These women are not free to leave. There's a guard, according to two people that formerly lived there. You know, they came on this newspaper and they reported exactly what happened. They said that they're not free to go. There's some muscular, person outside, a goon basically outside of this guest house, preventing them from leaving. That is not a relationship. If that is any kind of real relationship, it's an abusive relationship. And we know about these kinds of relationships all the time. It's one thing for somebody to be in a relationship. It's quite another thing for somebody to be in an abusive relationship. And, that's what it is. I mean, this is what you have. I mean, this is analogous to human trafficking, where people go somewhere under false pretenses. For instance, they're lured to a foreign country with the promise of earning all kinds of money. Once they get there, their passport is confiscated, their phones are confiscated, and they're not free to go. And they're basically subjected to slavery. I mean, I don't understand, like, how somebody who speaks out against oppression, against black people, can tolerate oppression of women. Can, glorify it and view calling, saying somebody's out of pocket, you got these women in line and all that kind of stuff. How they can have no problem, have objections to black people as a group being oppressed, but they have no problem with black women being oppressed. And I think
these women are not being held against their will. You just said that they spoke to two former people that lived there. What did they do? They escaped?
Right, they did escape. They escaped from the place. I mean, that's what's in the article. The article says how they weren't
the will to leave. That's what she said. The woman on the press conference that they interviewed, who formerly stayed there, I just watched the interview before I came over here. The woman said that she finally got the will to leave. To leave. No one made her stay. To leave, and she was allowed to leave.
Yeah, she finally got. I mean, again, like I said in the article, they said that there's a man outside of this house that prevents them from leaving. And and some people have cited, for instance, this interview that the daughter did where she's talking about how she's free and all this and that. But when the person asked her, what state are you in? She refused to answer that question. When he asked her if she was with other roommates, she refused to answer that question. I mean, it's clear and obvious that that woman is being coached, that she's under control of somebody. And, that's one of the first things that people do in a cult in order to gain control over somebody's mind. They cut them off with their friends and family. If these allegations are true.
Would you consider Hugh Hefner in the Playboy Mansion as a coach?
What was that?
Would you consider Hugh Hefner in the Playboy Mansion as a coach?
I mean, obviously not. First of all, it's not relevant. Like, but that's the first point. It's not relevant. So even if he had the same situation, that doesn't deal with the core issue about whether or not these girls are victims. So that's the first point that I want to make. The second point is this, with respect to Hugh Hefner, there are no allegations about women being held against their will, having to face bodyguards, being told when they can leave, when they can't leave, how they can dress, what they eat, when they bathe, how they bathe. There's no allegations of them being recorded against their will, engaged in all kinds of lewd acts against their will and all that kind of stuff. There's no allegations about these. There's no situation where these girls, where those women are where Hefner has been accused of having sex with underage girls. There's no allegations of pedophilia. So I think that that's off base, and I think that that whole bringing up of Hugh Hefner is
right now? That's the question. Is he pedophilia right now in the situation that he's in?
No, he's not. But it goes to a
that's what I'm trying to figure out.
What was that?
Why do you keep alluding to that then, if that's not what he's doing?
Because it's a part of a pattern. And the fact of the matter is, he went to certain states where it's legal to be with underage girls so that he can control and influence them. And, you know, my whole point is that Hugh Hefner is irrelevant. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. That's just a deflection away from the core issue, which is whether or not these girls are victims. That's the only issue. How can that not be a state of victimhood where somebody is physically abusing you, verbally abusing you, controlling everything you do? That's an abusive relationship by any definition.
But these women,
I'm not understanding like why there's even a debate.
The thing we got done talking about two different cases of women who left. They were allowed to leave. They didn't want to leave. They were under his control, under brainwashed. That's what they keep saying. Like the father was saying, "Oh, my daughter's brainwashed."
Right, that is a part of it. That's a factor. That's an important factor here. I mean, it's not just about they're physically being restrained, and they're being mentally controlled. So, I mean, of course, the first step is to gain some kind of mental will to say, well, I have to leave this situation. You know, that's the first step. And, yeah, I mean, you always have, there are situations where captives have, you know, escaped captivity. And when they escape, you know, people don't say, well, those girls, for instance, in Nigeria, a couple of them escaped. Nobody says, well, they weren't held against their will.
Right. Why isn't R. Kelly locked up right now?
What was that?
Why isn't he locked up right now?
Well, there was a trial. I mean, I'll say, make it plain. I mean, he's not locked up because a lot of people are blinded by celebrity. If this was any other man who was captured on videotape having sex with a 14-year-old, urinating on a 14-year-old, engaging in all these lewd acts with a 14-year-old, it would have been an open and shut case, and they would have thrown away the key. But because he's a celebrity, they people defend him. And you have a lot of black people who naturally just defend any celebrity that's caught up in any kind of scandal if they're black, especially if they're a black man, because it goes back to Malcolm X's point. The black woman is the least respected and protected member of society. And the comments, you know, that I received, like, you know, even questioning whether or not if these allegations are true, I mean, you know, given, you know, assuming that those allegations are true, even under that scenario, you have people like yourself who are questioning whether or not they're victims. And that just speaks back to what Malcolm X talked about, like how black women are not respected. It's not nothing to be celebrating that somebody is quote unquote in pocket. You know, the whole pimp culture is not something that should be celebrated. And I think that too often that's what happens. But, you know, so those are my points. You back? You dropped off for a second. Yeah, so that's what I had to say, man. You know, I just think that it's a shame that, you know, you had this R. Kelly committing all these acts, and you have all these people defending him. You know, you have all these people defending him. Like I remember when that Huffington Post interview took place, people defended him. You know, they were like viewing him as the victim because somebody asked him some tough questions about his sexual history. They were acting like this man, R. Kelly, was some kind of martyr or something. Like he was Jesus Christ on the cross or something. That's how people were acting. And, you know, I'm sure that later on there's going to be some videos from people, a lot of other people defending this guy because we don't respect the black woman the way we should. We don't respect and defend black girls the way we should. In fact, we celebrate the exploitation of black girls and women. So those are my thoughts. I see that LA is on mute, like if he's here. So I'm on.
Get to running. Don't get to running. Don't get to running.
What's up, man? So what else you got to say, man? I'm not running. I told you, let's debate. I think I made my points well. You know, I don't think, you know, so far I haven't heard a real rebuttal.
You look here, man. You sitting up here accusing this man of all kind of crimes off something that he allegedly did back then that he wasn't prosecuted for back then either. Something that he didn't ever get prosecuted for. I mean, you getting your Fox News on, bro. You getting your
First of all, on. Okay, I'll say one point real quick. Like, you don't settle cases for millions of dollars when there's no wrongdoing. I mean, this man has settled cases where he's been accused of various, sexual violations and stuff, and he settled those cases. You know, most people don't settle a case this week. The fact that he settled these cases speaks volumes. You know, the fact that he happened to get off from those charges doesn't mean that he's not guilty. I mean, there are all kinds of reports of this.
Two different kind of ways. That can be looked at in two different ways.
There are reports of him going to high schools looking for women. I mean, we gotta stop defending this debauchery, man. I mean, how can we defend this stuff? I mean, would you be comfortable with him being around your daughters?
I got my daughter's about to be 17 in a few days. And I raised my daughter, and I wouldn't really be too much worried about R. Kelly brainwashing my daughter. I wouldn't be too worried about that.
Well, I'm sure that those parents that sent their kids off to hang out with R. Kelly, I think that they probably felt the same way. Like one of the parents who said, well, I'm going to meet with him backstage, have a conversation with him backstage. They came to
now is thinking about it. His father is thinking right now, R. Kelly probably pissing on his daughter. He probably pissing on his daughter. So he sent them off knowing, like you said, he right now.
Yeah, you're breaking up.
He already had.
Yeah, you were breaking up.
Okay, let me use the throwback mic. What I'm saying is that he's pissed on. He's urinated on women before. So why would this man allow his daughter to go off with a man who was urinated on a woman before, and then now he has a problem with the outcome of this? But that's
a good question. Like, why would he allow his
consent though?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question about why would parents allow their kids to be around him. I mean, that's a great point. That's something that I raised in my video. It's like nobody is really looking out for Black girls and Black women. I mean, it seems like the primary responsibility is on the parents. I mean, they're the first line of defense for their children. I mean, they had an obligation to protect their daughter, and they failed miserably at it. You know, so I don't exonerate them at all. They're to blame for this situation as well. You know, I just hope that the authorities investigate this and the facts come out. You know, I want to hear from these people, and I'm sure the truth will eventually come out, man. You know, the truth can't be suppressed for long. We'll find out what's real, man. But yeah, so I'm just glad we had this discussion. I just wanted to have a live debate, you know, so we could talk about these issues. Because, you know, I don't like doing the back and forth video thing, you know, with this technology. It's better to just have a discussion with people. So I'm going to look through these comments and, you know, try to respond to some people. I see a lot of the people from your channel over here. So it's going to take me a second to look through these. So I'm going to shout out everybody in the chat room. Shout out to Dorothy Talbert. Hold on one second. So Dre the Great said he has a hard time believing that he would have that much control. You know, first of all, he's a celebrity. He's rich and famous. He has resources. He's cutting these young women off from their families and stuff like that. You know, that's the first step to gaining control over somebody's mind. Like with these cults, what they do is they cut someone off from their friends and family. And then they're able to exercise control at that point. And we've heard about Stockholm Syndrome and all that kind of stuff. And that's what we have here. I mean, we have a situation where this woman got on camera trying to defend R. Kelly. But when she's asked about key questions, she's ducking and dodging those questions. And that speaks to the control. I mean, you can see that these were staged videos that she did. And you can see that she's saying what she needs to say in order to get along in that house with R. Kelly. Now, I see that somebody here called me a simp, you know, and I think that that's lame, you know, when people call people simps. I mean, it's like these people are unable to debate. They're unable to challenge ideas, so what they do is throw around labels to try to discredit somebody, to attack them. And most of these people that call people simps in these comment sections and stuff like that, most of them are punk ass cowards that don't post their own content, that don't even show their face, weak as hell, you know, victimhood mentality, where they view themselves as a victim of the black woman. And they're the definition of a weak ass beta male, as Cynthia G calls them, man. So I can't take these people seriously. So I'm looking through the comments a little bit more. And then some of these people just make such stupid comments, like this guy, MJ. MJ, you know, one of the famous trolls in the so-called black sector, talking about those women chose up. How is being held captive choosing up? I mean, then they say something about how this is, you know, I'm salty. Or, you know, people that are challenging the abuse of women, you know, challenging the victimization of black girls and women, that's being salty. This is the sick mentality that a lot of our people have. And you got this redundant person just saying the same thing over and over again. I'm going to delete his comments and block them. All right, so let's continue on with these comments. Now, somebody said, well, what crime was he convicted of? And I never asserted that he was convicted of a crime. He was charged with a crime, and he settled several sexual allegations. You know, he paid out of court, reached agreements with people. And that speaks to, you know, his culpability. You know, I know that if I was innocent of something, I wouldn't shell out all these millions of dollars. All right, let's continue on. And I've already pointed out how I think that, you know, the woman is brainwashed. You know, I don't know how somebody, you know, I'm reading this comment from Jamila. She's saying that she's clearly not brainwashed. I don't understand where you're getting that from. You know, she's not free to leave on her own. She couldn't even tell the reporter what state she was in or if she was with some other people. So that speaks to the fact that she's under somebody's control. The fact that she can't reach out to her family and friends speaks to the fact that she's under somebody's control. Do you really think a family would go out of their way to contact the authorities if there was no problem? Man, I tell you, and the thing is, the thing that's really sad about this situation is, you know, this issue of defending black girls and women is not just an issue that black men are not meeting up to, you know, dealing with properly, a lot of black men rather. This is an issue that black women even deal with, you know, because some black women don't protect their own daughters, don't protect their own sisters, don't protect their own friends. Instead of protecting their fellow women, what they do is rally behind disgusting people like this guy, R. Kelly. What they do is buy this scumbag's music. That's what they do. You know, they're at his concerts, dancing to his music, despite all this history of abusing young black girls and women. So let me just keep going through this before I sign off. I see somebody said free. Snake Loke said free R. Kelly. Wow, man. First of all, he's not in jail. He's already free because, you know, people like you don't care about him abusing uh, young black women and girls. All right, let me just continue on. And then I see the hype man, you know, the hype man of the black YouTube sector, Jafar Blackman, is talking about this is going to be a struggle for new possibilities. The bully is coming on strong. I mean, this guy is, you know, this guy is the Don King of the black sector of YouTube, always hyping up people to go at each other and stuff. You said he's coming on strong. It's going to be a struggle, but I'm still standing, man. I'm still standing. I stand alone. I'm standing alone right now. So how's that a struggle? All right. Let's see what else we got here. Again, this guy, MJ, asked, did Hugh Hefner run a code? How is that relevant? That's irrelevant. And, you know, those were adult women free to leave and go. You know, there were no allegations, again, of him holding any women against their will. So chill with the deflections, chill with the false equivalencies. All right, so I'm going to finish going through these. I see there's a lot of people just going back and forth with each other. Now, I see that Lisa Love said, well, I have an issue when people, I mean, it's just unbelievable. Like that you got black women trying to defend R. Kelly. But then again, this is a black woman, Lisa Love, who defends a damn tap dancing coon like Tommy Sotomayor. So it's no surprise. But she says, when the media brings up how people who've been shot by the police have a criminal record, I have an issue with that. So why am I bringing up this issue with R. Kelly? Number one, I mean, the key distinction there is that those people who have been killed by the police, they are victims. They're not committing any crime. They are victims. When somebody commits a crime, that's when their criminal history becomes relevant. When somebody engages in potentially criminal behavior, which this may be, where he's holding these women against their will, then his criminal history matters at that point. And then somebody asked, why am I talking to LA? You know, again, I'm willing to debate anybody, man. You know, I do have respect for LA. You know, I've been checking out his stuff for, you know, quite some time. I have respect for the brother, you know, because he had heart to come on here and debate me. You know, he'll debate anybody and stuff like that, much like myself. Unlike people like O'Shea Duke Jackson, a punk ass coward, unlike, you know, David Carroll or Quasi 100, these people don't have a heart to debate me live, or Painless Risen. And you could tell him I said this. At least the brother LA had the courage to debate, and I'll debate anybody. Yeah, I see. I mean, these channels, man, these channel names, the trolls that come from this channel are a trip, man. You got one person says simping for the name of his account is simping for these titties or them titties or whatever. And he said that LA is the biggest draw, and we're on this channel because of LA, and it's like 97% of LA supporters here. Yeah, that's true, man. That's true, man. A lot of these, you you know, people in the black sector are in this chat room, and it's a lively discussion going on there. And I check y'all out from afar, you know. So let's see before we close out. And that comment was from Haven Bullets. You know, he asked why was I debating LA. Shout out to Haven Bullets. You know, I check out his stuff too. And Jafar Blackman said R. Kelly is a nasty nigga. Even though I'm trying to restrain from using that word, the N word and stuff like that. I feel you. You know, anyone that urinates on 14-year-old girls is disgusting and despicable. And it's a damn shame that you got people defending that scumbag. All right, let's see. All right, well, I want to thank y'all for watching. Peace and blessings to each and every one of you. You know, I appreciate your support. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, you know, I invite you to subscribe. And I told y'all this will be light work. We haven't been here that long. So peace and blessings to each and every one of you.